Hello, the date is the 21st. 21st of November 2016, and it's 8:36. My name is Chris Bosley. I live at 126 Croydon Avenue, New South Wales, Sydney, Australia. The building is owned by the Anglican Church, and it's used to house Moore Theological College students. There's a group of these students that are computer criminals, and they've been harassing us, and in many ways. And one of the ways is computer attacks on our computers, attacks on our home. They've entered our home. They've vandalized our car, etc., etc., etc. But the most alarming crime committed is a remote access to all of our computers with no indiscretion. They do it on a daily basis, and they've been doing it for years. All of our computers and our phones. There's not much evidence. I call the attack InSeNRA. There's very little evidence that shows. The only thing you can really see is the only thing that really shows in the attack is the evidence that's left by the people. And if I could have a runtime monitor to monitor runtime activity, and if I could have a DMA, direct memory access monitor, I might be able to find their activity if I could identify it, because it's foreign to the system and it's underneath the system. But it's difficult because it doesn't interact with the system. It's like an embedded system. That's like they invade directly through the hardware, and it's like a completely alternative operating system compared to the operating system that I'm using. One main telltale that I noticed was the mount time of the USB stick. So here you can see this is on a Dell. This here is on a Dell Precision M4700. I ran Tails. There you can see Tails, and I ran it on live drive. I disabled in BIOS. I disabled the hard disks. I disabled all networking, all wireless, and all Bluetooth in BIOS, and even the NIC, and I even disabled virtualization. Basically, I disabled as much as I possibly could and still have the machine running, and they were still accessing the machine. When they access the machine, the USB, when you mount the USB, it says January 1st, 1970. For months and months and months, it would say January 1st, 1970 for months and months and months. About a month ago, I was desperately looking for a platform that I could compute on without having them access it, because they've accessed Lenovo, they've accessed ASUS, they've accessed Dell, they have a Dell tower with no wireless or Bluetooth, and a Dell laptop, and also an HP laptop with an AMD processor, and also a PowerBook processor. A PowerBook, Apple PowerBook with a PowerPC CPU processor. Very old machine. So that they've accessed all of these machines remotely. Now the thing is that I removed the wireless card on all of them, and then the wireless card and also the Bluetooth on all of them. On the Apple, I removed wireless, Bluetooth, a modem, and the Apple Play card. On the Dell Tower, I never had any wireless, and I never had Bluetooth capacity, and they accessed it within seconds and modified the firmware, I think, because the CD continued to run even when it was powered off, and also the GPU would power. When I powered off the Dell Tower, the graphics card, the fan would continue running. It was still running, the graphics card. It's almost like they changed the firmware to keep the graphics card running so that they could use the memory and the CPU of the graphics card. The GPU, pardon me, not CPU. The GPU, of the graphics card. It's almost like they embedded a system on the graphics card, and they wanted to keep the graphics card going. Or they were using the memory in the graphics card, and so they wanted the graphics card constantly running so that they could access it. Now, I noticed this behavior on all my machines. They would always run. I would turn the machine off, and in the morning, the battery would be dropped by 4 or 5%, sometimes as much as 10%. And the machine or device, phone, etc., was supposed to be off. And yet here, it appeared to be off, and yet it wasn't off. So I think they changed the firmware and added some attack that made it appear the phone was off, but it was always on, so they could constantly connect to it and constantly monitor it, constantly create an environment, or pardon me, create an environment where their changes were consistent and persistent. So here we're talking about USB, and I'm going to try not to get too off topic. So here the USB is plugged in. So on all the machines, every one of them, when I ran live Linux, the USB would read January 1st, 1970, and the entire time this happened, for years, since about, I guess it started happening near the middle of, or near the end of 2014, the beginning of 2015, I can't remember exactly when this started. But when I started noticing it, it was consistent all the time. Pardon me. Now, it continued the whole time like that for years, till this year, till 2016, actually, till about a month ago. Like I said, I was desperate to find a platform where I could use, where I could compute on. So I went to JCar, which is an electronics store, and I went to the one about an hour and a half away because I didn't want to have any, Anglicans, and I was hoping that I would be able to find some place where there was no Anglicans working there. I figured if I go far enough away from the school, maybe I'll find a better probability of finding a place where there are no Anglicans. So I went there, and I was talking to this guy, and I told him the story, and I told him about the USB. I said every time I told him about the Anglicans connecting to my machines and how they were connecting, remote accessing my machines, and they had root control over my machines. Even when I removed the wireless cards and Bluetooth cards, when I removed all network capability and had no 3G. He didn't believe me, and then I showed him January 1st, 1970, and then he was surprised. And then I showed him work done by Patrick Stewin on the IAMT attack. Patrick Stewin used to be a researcher in Berlin, and now he works for a security company, I think. I don't know what he's doing presently. Very intelligent guy. Did some work with another fella on IAMT attack using Intel's management software, management engine, ME, and accessing Intel based laptops and CPUs and towers, etc. Off when they were even when the power was off, when the laptop was shut down, and accessing them and administering these systems, even reinstalling an operating system, all remotely. So this problem here that I'm having seemed kind of similar. Even when all my airport was gone, my wireless was gone, and my Bluetooth was gone out of the machine, they were still accessing it. So I told the guy, I said, and the one telltale is that the USB is January 1st, 1970. And he goes, well, how do you know they're connecting to it? I said, well, because I told him the reasons why I thought, and he, looked into it, and then we talked after the store closed, and I was outside talking to him about the Anglicans and stuff, and then I started getting nervous because of the way he was acting. He kind of reminded me of an Anglican, the way he was acting and the questions he was asking. He was probing and like data mining, but he wasn't really curious like I would be curious. I'd be like exploring ways that they were doing it. He was just trying to find out what I knew. And so I thought, I asked him, I said, you're not an Anglican, are you? I'm starting to feel nervous because you're starting to act like an Anglican. And he goes, oh, no, I grew up in he grinned, an Anglican grin, and then he chuckled and he says, I grew up in an Anglican environment, but I'm a Satanist. So I thought, okay, fine. Satanist, okay, he's not an Anglican, fine. He understands what they're like, fine. And maybe I can trust this guy. So we went our separate ways, and I had a very, very uneasy feeling when I was going home. Well, 4 days later, it just kept bugging me. His attitude and kept things I remembered about the conversation kept bugging me, and he just really didn't seem genuine after a while. And I came home and I tried turning on my machine again, and it said January 1st, 1970. However, this time something was different. When I saved to the USB stick, the file changed. The date changed. It went back the same. So here you're looking at the first list, LSAL, which is list all long of the media of the drive. It says January 1st, 1970. And then below that, it says root, and then it says October 7th. Um, the date that and the time that I mounted the disc. And remember that this is mounted away from here. I went to another person's house, and I parked in their driveway, a person I know, and I parked in their driveway, which is about 40 minutes away from where I live in Sydney. And when I parked in the driveway and I turned it on, it said January 1st, 1970. Now, a couple minutes later, I saved a file to the USB stick, and it said October 7th. So now something has changed, and it had only been a few days since I talked to this guy. Now that's the only thing that was different. Um, Usually, I'm at home all the time, and I never talk to anybody. But I talked to this one guy, and it somehow got back to the Anglicans, and they had modified their attack. They fixed the January 1st, half of the January 1st problem, which was now when I write to the disk, it turns to today's date. When you first plug it, if you unmount the disk again and you plug it back in, it'll be January 1st, 1970. But when you write to the disk again, it'll be today's date. So they're trying to fix this problem. This is proof that they're in the system. This is proof that they're in my system. And like I said, on this machine, I was away from here, and I had everything turned off. I had wireless turned off, Bluetooth turned off, everything. Even the NIC I had turned off. So they must have followed me out there. They must have followed me out to where I was, parked nearby, like within 100 meters or something, and then accessed the machine because they have the ID of the machine, and they could just do a scan for it, find it, and access it. Now, the reason I say that is because one day I did a little experiment. I had a little laptop, and I could start that laptop in a little tiny Faraday cage. So I started that laptop in a little tiny Faraday cage where it couldn't be connected to by anything. I started it up, and I quickly entered a USB stick, and it was the proper date. And I thought, oh, I fixed it. You just start the machine up in a Faraday cage, and it'll be fixed. They can't get to it because I figured, okay, then they're connecting at startup, so they're embedding their system in memory or something during startup. But within 10 or 15 minutes, it went back to January 1st, and it didn't say the date anymore. So they had connected to the machine. So they can connect to the machine at startup, or they can connect to the machine after it starts. So I tried it again, and then they realized what I did, and they started up, changed the script, or they scripted it, made a script for their devices, whatever they're using to scan for my computer's ID. And then when they see the ID, they hit it with the script, and they inject their embedded system or whatever they're using to connect to the machine. Because the second I tried a couple days later to start it, after I saw this problem, how it changed when to the correct date after I wrote to the USB stick, I thought, oh crap. So I tried starting the little laptop up in a Faraday cage. I took it out, immediately threw in the USB stick, and unfortunately, it read January 1st, 1970. So they modified their attack based on what they knew I would have done. They knew I started up in a Faraday cage because they've broken in my unit and they've seen the stuff that I have in my house, right? And I think that the only time they could have done that, because I'm always home, is when I'm sleeping. So, or they just guessed that I had started up in a Faraday cage based on secondary information that they had, or guesses, or whatever. So they started when I started the laptop in the Faraday cage, it no longer worked. I took the laptop out, quickly inserted the USB, mounted it, and it said January 1st, 1970. So they immediately attacked. As opposed to the first time I put it in a Faraday cage. When I took the laptop out, put a USB stick in, I had 15 minutes of leeway because they hadn't modified their attack to look for the machine when it was in a Faraday cage. on startup. They were looking for the machine on startup activity, I guess. And when they didn't see the startup activity, because it was in a Faraday cage, they missed it, and they had to inject the system later on somehow in a different way, which took them 10 or 15 minutes to do, as opposed to doing it automatically when the system booted up. So after they realized that I had known about the January 1st problem, and after I had gone to a public place and told people and showed things about the January 1st problem, they fixed it. I went to another place after, and I talked to a couple Asians worked at the store. They said they weren't Anglicans, and I said to the guys, I said, "Do you have any raspberries?" I went to an electronics store or something like that. I think the name of it is Electronics. I said, "Do you have any Raspberry Pis with no wireless?" And they says, "No." Well, why don't you want wireless? I told them the story. I told them how the Anglicans were connecting to my machine. Then I showed them pictures. Then I showed them pictures like this. I showed them pictures like this, which is my system. And I showed them here, if you look at D, this is my system on my Android. And here, if you look at the D folder, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folders down, it says the first January 1st, 1970 at 10 o'clock. Now, 10 o'clock is the default time of my Android. My Android, if I take the battery out and I put the battery back in, my files will read January 1st, 2010 at 10 o'clock. So the 10 o'clock is the default time for my phone, but the January 1st, 1970, that's wrong. That doesn't seem right to me. And then also, see here D, January 19, here's root and here's proc is 1970. Protect S is 1970. SBIN is 1970 with all the file system. System is 1970. So you see system on the very near the bottom there is 1970, and then all of the files in the root system are 1970. Charger, init, factory init, RC, and all the way down, right down to the very bottom of the system. And you look at all the accounts. See, here's what I was talking about: user ID, UID 10006, the January 1st, 2010. See, maybe I had taken the battery out, or maybe something had happened there. But then to cause that January 10th. I don't know what caused that. Could have been I took the battery out. I don't know. Anyways, here's UID. That should be today's date, so maybe I took the battery out. I don't know. But on UID 10001, that's, or pardon me, that's 2010 too. But here, see, failed transaction log, January 1970, January 1st, 1970. State, stats, transaction log, all 1970. And it goes right down. Every file, every open file in the system is 1970. So I showed the guys this picture, and they were like, "That's really weird." And then I told them about the USB date, and they really thought it was weird. And then I said, "So if you're around any Anglicans, put your phone away. Don't have your phone on." I said, "If you know any Anglicans," and the Asian kind of he was facing me, and he had his back to the white guy, and the white honky looking guy looked very dishonest to me. The Asian was kind of putting his eyes into the corner of his head, pointing to the white guy with his eyes, as if to tell me to shut up, because he's an Anglican. So then I took the hint, and I was like, okay, so these Anglicans might be everywhere, so you got to be really careful, and you got to watch out for who you're around, and you got to watch out for your phone, because if your phone says 1970, it very well could mean that this Anglican is attached to your phone and knows everything about your life and is monitoring you on a daily basis, so just be careful. These are very, very bad people. So there you go, January 1st, 1970, and they're trying really hard to fix this. This has been around for a long time. I've noticed it, like I said, at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and the minute I told somebody about this in a public place, it got back to the Anglicans, Presbyterians, and Baptists. Another thing to keep in mind is it's not just Anglicans. It's Presbyterians and Baptists that are in their group too. The computer guy one of the computer people that I think is attacking me next door is a Baptist, and he's a graduate from Adelaide University with a mathematics degree, and he's really good at computers, I guess. I'm guessing because he did his paper on cryptography. Well, he did his paper on other mathematical concepts his thesis, but he also did portion of his thesis on cryptography. So I'm guessing he has an interest in computers, and I'm guessing that he would love, as well as a lot of other Anglicans, to work for ASIO in data collection or in surveillance, because the Anglican Church has a massive influence on the Australian government. Premier Mike Baird is an Anglican. Uh, the Minister of Planning is an Anglican. Stokes is his name. He's an Anglican. And I think that all of these people are know about what's going on with this, and I think that they have known for a long time. Rufus Black spearheaded and really supported. Rufus Black is an Anglican. He really supported metadata retention, and he was on an ABC debate about metadata retention, and his stance on the debate on ABC was called Only the Wicked Need Fear. And if you really think about it, it's kind of like that, isn't it? Only the wicked need fear. But you can look at it the other way. Okay, one way to look at it is only the wicked need fear. And if you're a good person, you don't have anything to worry about, right? We can watch everything you're doing, right? And there's no problem. You got nothing to hide. Well, the other part of it, too, is the other way to look at it, and is that only the wicked need fear. The wicked do need fear. That's how they get what they get, and that's how they do what they do. They don't use love, they use fear. It's like the old saying, I'd rather have fear than love. And people that are obsessed with power want fear. So the wicked need, only the wicked need fear. Well, that kind of suits Rufus Black, because I think he's pretty wicked. And that suits a lot of Anglicans, they're pretty wicked. And that suits a lot of people posing as Christians that go to this Moore Bible College. They're pretty wicked. And they do need fear. And they love fear, because they use it to get what they want. And I certainly hope that this problem, the way they're accessing computers is figured out. And I hope that it's figured out before they fix this January 1st problem, 1970, because just look at your USB, guys. If you have a USB plugged in and it says January 1st, 1970, that could very well mean that these Anglicans are connecting to your computer. So look around. There might be an Anglican around you, or whoever taught them how to do it. I hope that this problem is fixed before they fix. I hope this problem is realized, how they connect to the machines is realized before they fix the January 1st problem. Because if they fix the January 1st problem, if they figure out how to mount the USB on the system that they've annexed and controlled, and they figure out how to get rid of the January 1st, 1970 USB problem, then there's going to be very, very little evidence, and it's going to be very hard to find them. The only way will be runtime monitoring and monitoring of DMA memory. So here in the here in this PDF I downloaded is the only place I could find any evidence of this. So this is Stack Exchange, and I was looking online for what's going on, and the only thing I could find is this: mount changes directory time to 1970. And it says, we are developing an embedded Linux system using BusyBox, and the system is working fine except for a strange mount issue with time and date. When we create a directory, it has the correct time and date. However, once we mount a device, the time and date changes to January 1st, 1970, and that's kind of exactly what is happening with my laptops. They've kind of fixed it. However, I'm hoping that they can't fix it entirely, because I'm hoping that it stays until someone figures out how they're connecting to the circuit board. This here BusyBox, I've seen BusyBox on my Slackware, and I've seen BusyBox in logs, BusyBox activity that was separate from my computers. And I'm thinking that maybe this is the same thing that they did with my Asus laptop that I was running Slackware on, and this is the same thing that they did with my other computers, or with our other computers, because they broke my wife's computer and they accessed and monitored my wife's computer as well. So using an embedded system with BusyBox means they're adding they're embedding. I'm guessing they're embedding during startup time or boot time, and they're putting BusyBox into an allocated memory, and it runs on its own underneath the operating system, and then they run in tangent, in parallel to the operating system within memory, and they're using their tools connected through a backdoor in the circuit board. I don't know how they're doing it. Maybe radio frequencies to analog digital converter. Maybe they're using RF frequencies and then using an ADC or an analog to digital converter on the circuit board, and they're converting data that way. They're converting analog data over the air, over FM waves, to digital data on the ADC converter. If the I don't know if the boards have an ADC analog to digital converter. I don't know. This is why this has to be studied by people who know circuitry and electronics. And I'm hoping that somebody has watched this all the way to the end, and that person is good at electronics, because this is a really bad problem. And I can't find anybody to help. I can't find anybody to share this information with. I hope somebody finds this on YouTube, and it would be nice to be able to chat with somebody who actually believed me for once. I wish you the best, and I want to thank you for watching the video. So I think this is a screenshot. So you know what? I just turned it sideways, didn't I? So you may have had your head. I'm really sorry about that. So I'll just run through here and I'll just show you. Mount changes directory. I'm sorry about that. That was pretty stupid. That was pretty shit dumb. So we are developing an embedded Linux system using BusyBox version 119. The system is working fine except for a strange mount issue with time and date. And then see, the mount directory is very similar to my problem. January 1st. I don't think it's exactly the same, but it's very similar, and that's the closest thing I could find to it. I'm guessing that they're going to try and throw out false leads, and they're going to a lot of these people are developers, and a lot of them are programmers, so they might even insert false data into the Linux system. If they're developers for the Linux system, they might even put false data to create this problem and call it a bug. So they might put it into head, or they might try to get it into Linux main and try to insert the problem into the kernel, so then they can cover their asses and say that no, this guy's freaking nuts, he's crazy, it's a problem with Linux, it's a problem, it's a bug. But I don't think it's a bug, because like I said, if it was a bug, I mean, think for a second, if it was a bug, why would they fix it? Remember I said that they changed the attack. When I write to the USB, it changes. Now, if it was a bug, how could they do that? Just change it like that. My kernel wasn't changed. And if it was a bug, why, when I put my system into a Faraday cage, I started it up, and for 15 minutes I had the same environment. And when I mounted a USB stick, it read today's date. And then they figured it out, and then they attacked the laptop, and then it said 1970 again. So no, this is not a bug. This is not a mistake or a glitch. This is intentional attack on the hardware, on the subsystems of the circuit board, on the memory and the buses and the CPU. And this is dangerous, 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 dangerous. This is beyond anything. This is beyond security. This goes underneath intrusion detection systems. This goes underneath firewalls. This is really, really bad, nasty, toxic stuff. Please spread the word around, and thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.